Okay, so I just wanted to make a very, very condensed 5-minute summary of Slaves to Darkness after spending hours and hours reading through the faction pack. You can watch those full videos if you'd like to. But this is sort of my take on once you sort out all of the junk from the book, and there is so much junk in Age of Sigmar. This is sort of what you're left with. It's actually a very condensed, very simple sort of army. And I think most armies look like this as well. I think Age of Sigmar has a very big junk problem, and you'll see me grappling with that with the marking system. Slaves to Darkness is actually quite a good book as far as books go, or as far as indexes, I suppose, go. But they still only have a score of 41 out of 100 because there is so much junk, just so many useless rules that sort of stack up and make the army look like there's more going on than there is. So this is, in my mind, what Slaves to Darkness actually are. Firstly, slaves have no battle formations, heroic traits, artifacts, or prayers. They literally don't have prayers, but all of the other stuff is so bad that it's barely worth bothering with. Their battle traits are small buffs to unit effectiveness. So they don't let them break rules or do anything particularly fancy or unusual. They just give them a bit of rend or a bonus to hit or a penalty to opponents hitting them or something like that. Nothing wrong with that, just that they're you don't have to worry about them too much. Their units are a little bit more efficient than the War Scrolls look because of those buffs. They have a Fights Last and a 3d6 charge spell. These things do break rules and let Slaves to Darkness do things that other armies can't do, or that their War Scrolls definitely couldn't do without the spells. These are the things to watch out for in Slaves to Darkness, are mostly these two abilities. The fact that you might be fighting last, and the fact that you have a spell that can make you charge 3d6. They have 12 War Scrolls, right? Archaon, Be'lakor, Abraxia are all interesting and useful War Scrolls. Archaon and Abraxia depend on their points a bit because they're like stats on a stick. Be'lakor is a bit different. He's got abilities that are very unique and very powerful, very game warping, and it's very hard to figure out a points cost where Be'lakor wouldn't be useful. Then you've got, for hero options, you've got the Gaunt Summoner on foot, mostly because he's a double casting guy with open regiment options. Then you've got the Sorcerer Lord, who gives your guys a 5-up ward, and the Karka Lord, who lets you have +2 to charge once per game. I think maybe the Karka Lord might need to be a bit cheaper than he is, but there's certainly some combinations and some things you can do with him that do make him interesting. Then you've got a core of the army around dudes in black armor. You've got Varangard, Knights, Chosen, and Warriors. These are all kind of the same unit in a way. They're all kind of just Varangard. There's Varangard, who move quite far, take a ton of damage, do a ton of damage. They're just an all-round very excellent unit. Then you've got Knights, who are just like a cheaper, worse version of Varangard, perhaps a little bit more durable, points for points, than Varangard, but they do less damage. Certainly they don't fight twice or anything. So the way I think about it is sort of, this is the durable anvil version, and this is the offensive hammer version. And then you've got the foot versions of both of those. Chosen are Varangard, but on foot, and Warriors are Knights, but on foot. They're both a bit cheaper than their counterparts, and they're cheaper because they're slower. So it's really up to you. Any mix of these things, I think, is fine. You do need some damage, and you do need some durability. So having some Warriors and Knights for durability and having some Chosen and Varangard for damage sort of makes sense. Outside of the core of the army, you've got Furies and Fell Riders are probably the most interesting chaff. They do something unique. Furies are very good against melee armies, and Fell Riders are quite good against ranged armies. There are other chaff units in the game. Chaff is a really low bar because they just have to be cheap. You just need models that don't cost a lot. So there's some of those. There's Dark Oath Marauders, or Dark Oath Savages, or Chaos Legionnaires. But in my mind, those are all just cheap dudes. If you can fit in Furies and Fell Riders, that's sort of my opinion. That's where I'm looking. From a design perspective especially, those other options are literally just cheap bodies. They don't really do anything at all other than exist on the battlefield. These things are at least fast. They've got some sort of rules that will help them deal with something, and they're a bit more interesting. So to me, that's what Slaves to Darkness looks like. That's the whole book. It's 12 War Scrolls, 2 spells, and some buffs from their battle traits. And that's it. You don't have to worry about anything else. You don't really have to think about anything else. You can spend time agonizing over whether you want Dark Radiance or whether you want Deathmonger or which of the artifacts you're going to pick or any of the battle formations. You can look at all the other war scrolls, like, do I want my Chaos Legionnaires or do I want Chaos Marauders, and try and eke out all of those little benefits. But overall, I think this is what the book looks like. This is what most armies that you play against will look like. There'll be some combination of these sorts of units. Possibly, again, the chaff being a bit more open for choices. But you'll see a lot of Vanguard. You'll see a lot of Be'lakor, and I'm not sure about Archaon and Abraxia. Those really depend on points, but if their points are good, you'll see lots of them too. For the hero options, I think you'll see the Sorcerer Lord a whole bunch, because that 5-up ward is pretty good. And then other people might choose to take Knights or Warriors. You'll see a 5 of Chosen in a lot of lists. These things very much depend on the points about which one is the best one, because they're all slightly interchangeable. And yeah, that's it. That's Slaves to Darkness to me. I'm curious about if you see your army the same way. If it's like, actually there's a whole ton of junk that you have to sift out of the book, and then you're left with a very tight list of things. And I just want to like plug this into the scoring system. These things are a bit bad, right? The fact that their battle formations, heroic traits, and artifacts are all pretty bad. But if you plug the war scrolls into the scoring system, right, we've got a maximum of 46 from war scrolls, and you get 3 points for each good war scroll. So it's just like 36 points straight up for all of this good stuff if you get rid of all the junk. And that's more than they scored, right? So I think my scoring system works really well for identifying this junk problem in Age of Sigmar. It's something I'm really frustrated by. It's okay, I guess, in some respects to have war scrolls that are, they sort of technically exist. They allow you to play a unit in the army, but you're not really supposed to. So they deliberately make the war scroll weak so that you don't necessarily include that. That's okay if it's like a Warcry warband or something. They're like, you can use these models in our game, but you're not really supposed to. So we're not going to make them so good that they're game breaking. But then they have things like all the manifestations are bad. Why do they even make those models? This is the only game those manifestations exist in. Why are all the artifacts bad? Why are the heroic traits so weak? Like, this is the only place they exist. This is the only spot that you use them. Why are the battle formations so useless? These rules in particular have no excuse. I can understand the Centurion Marshal or the Fomeroid Crusher or whatever the heck, the stuff coming out of Warcry. But the other stuff I just think is, it's just missed opportunity the whole way through. So it's frustrating. You'll see probably as I do this series and I read through the faction packs over time, there will be a slow descent into madness as I encounter more and more useless rules and more just clutter and bloat that is unnecessary. Up next, we have Soulblight Gravelords. And Soulblight Gravelords, they've got to be one of the most junk-dense books in the entire game. Throughout history, they have had a lot of extra ancillary garbage, and this new edition it looks like it's just getting worse, to be honest. They just can't design good rules for this many units. They struggle with it. They can't even come up with 3 good artifacts. So yeah, I'm a bit frustrated by it, but once again, this is a good army. Slaves to Darkness is a good army. They're fun to play. 41 is, sadly, I think, going to be one of the higher scores of all of the armies. Or maybe it's low because I understand the army a bit more. I'll probably be more charitable in situations where I'm less certain about what's going on, which I guess is the situation that designers are in. But anyway, keen to hear your thoughts. I never know how to wrap up videos like this, so I'm just going to leave it there. Cheers.